Susan, great to see you. Thank you for making a bit of time to come and have a chat with me. I appreciate that. I wanted to kick off by picking up something that you mentioned to me when we were talking, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. You said that the thing that was different about what you're doing is that you're building an AI-driven game. Now, I don't really understand what that means, actually. I don't understand what the difference is between an AI-driven game and a regular game. Why don't you tell people?
Well, it's funny because AI has been a part of games for decades, so it's a reasonable thing to be confused about. And maybe that's why it's so strange that our industry really struggles with it. It has been struggling with it. Um, you know, I like to say video games wouldn't exist without technology. Without technology, I guess we'd be board games, stories, and
Yeah.
but we're not. We're a technology company. We grew out of software, but yet the this new transition, generative AI and LLMs, has been a struggle for the game industry more than anybody else.
Right.
And then we can get into some of the reasons why I think that is. But in any case, what I mean is less about traditional AI and more about generative AI and LLMs. So traditionally, in every form of entertainment, we haven't seen ourselves, right? Like there's this constant consternation about the fact that there isn't a lot of diversity and representation in our media.
Yeah.
And as a parent, that can be troubling for your kids to not see people who look like them. And that was a problem that we set out to solve in the driest sense. I mean, we're building entertainment, we're building fun and humor and all the rest of this. But underneath it, we built this platform. And what this platform does is allow you to be you in a video game. And to that and fundamental core is what everything we're doing has in common is the fact that we're empowering the player to see themselves. And I don't mean by that we're stealing art and things like that out there to let you be yourself. What I mean is that our game has the AI trained on those systems that we've built. And
Right.
the AI, because it's very quick, allows you to change those things in runtime. So you're changing our mechanics, our systems, not anybody's mechanics and systems. But that's what's special, I think, about you versus
So,
zombies and what we're doing. You get to be you.
yeah, and I get the logic of that. I mean, I think your point about people wanting to see reflections of themselves and things, I mean, is well made. I mean, I totally get that.
It's
Let me,
important that we're all narcissists, right? As a
yeah,
society now, we're narcissists. Clearly,
yeah,
you can see that in social media, and
yeah.
so I think it's whether or not it should be important to us. It is important
Well, it
to
is
us.
important. Whether it should be or not is another matter. But let me just to explain to make sure we've got absolute clarity here. So what you're saying is, if I was playing some game where I'm hunting down this alien,
Mm.
on the screen you'll see a short, fat, grey-haired old bloke like me shooting at the alien. Is that? I mean, is that a summary of
You'll
what
see
you're
a
talking?
caricature of it. So let me set the
Right.
stage by what the game is, so to better
Okay.
understand that. So the game is called You versus Zombies. It is a post-apocalyptic game. The zombies won. It's something called a roguelite game, which means it's really kind of challenging. You're
Yeah.
meant to die a lot, which works well with a zombie game. And the idea is it's the future. There are only three survivors of this apocalypse, you and two of your friends. You all have magical abilities, fortunately. And you discover a spell that allows you to go back in time. The catch is that you have to give up your body to do it, and you're not sure if it's going to work. And, we all know from time travel films and books that it's a bad idea usually. But if there's three survivors left, what's the harm? So you do this. You perform something called the ritual. And the ritual allows you to go back in time and possess somebody from the past and help them to kill zombies with your magical abilities.
Okay.
So that's the framing in this game that allows you to say that you, Paul, want to be you. And in the ritual, you describe to your colleagues, Morgan and Ash, the person. So you give a name, you give a little bit of physical description. Now, if you said someone famous, you said Keir Starmer, it knows what Keir Starmer looks like. But you could describe yourself, what you look like, and also interesting things like maybe you're Keir Starmer, but you're wearing pink fluffy slippers. Whatever you want to
Okay.
describe about
Okay.
that character
And
gets created in an art style.
and
And then also, I'm sorry, go.
no, go on. You finish. Sorry.
Oh, and then you also describe a bit about what makes them tick. because that impacts the story. It's not just what you look like. So it could be the fact that you live in London. It could be the fact that your favorite color is red. It could be about the fact that you secretly play saxophone, whatever it is, a bunch of characters. So then in about 15 seconds, AI takes that information and using our platform, it sends that off to the different LLMs that we use and brings that back as data that can immediately be pulled into our game. And so now you get to time travel and be Paul Essery, and you go through a series of gameplay leading to a final boss fight with someone who has been deemed your mortal enemy. And you could pick who that mortal enemy is before you go back and do the whole damn thing again, over and over again, step by step, until we kill enough zombies to change the future.
So, I mean, I'm not a gamer particularly. I mean, I played when I was younger, not so much now. But tell me,
I think the definition of gamer has changed, by the way. Like, do you have Candy Crush on your phone, like most people do? Like,
I
or
don't,
Wordle,
I don't,
this,
but
okay. Or
I know a lot
Wordle,
of
for
people do.
example, like this. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
but
shocking how many people actually are gamers now.
yeah. No, I'm not saying it's not a very popular thing. I'm just saying I don't really do it so much. I
Yeah,
mean, I did when I was younger, but
yeah,
let me ask you a couple of questions. So the first one is,
yeah.
I mean, where did the idea come from? I mean, because it is quite it's different from anything else that I've seen. I mean, like I say, I'm not an expert on games, but I've looked at a few, and
Hmm.
this is
Hmm.
quite a different approach. I mean, where did that idea come from?
I partnered largely. So I started this company with my husband. We've been together for 30 years now. And most of my job is enabling his sort of cool, crazy, compelling, interesting ideas. And we've been doing
Right.
that for decades now together. Um, we had been um, dabbling, if you will, with generative AI immediately when the stuff came out. We love new tech. We love to try to figure out what the novel use cases are of tech, as opposed to like the gimmicks, things like that. So we already had some sense of what was possible with LLMs. And when we set this company up nearly 2 years ago, we raised enough money to experiment. And I pulled together a team of people I'd worked with before and said, here are the things that we want to experiment with. And so we very quickly got together a rudimentary version of our platform that was
Yeah.
just fit for purpose to prove this was possible, because we weren't sure it was even possible what we had in mind. Um, and we weren't sure what we were making yet, but we stumbled upon this character creator notion, this notion of being able to change these things at runtime, as
Mm.
being really fundamentally powerful, as being something that you couldn't do without LLMs. You couldn't have a team big enough. The entire workforce of the world couldn't in seconds generate that stuff for you. It's just
Right.
impossible to even part of what we're doing without an LLM. And that was what really grabbed us. And then You versus Zombies came about as a perfect way to showcase that.
I
And
mean,
the
that was my
style of
second
game,
question,
yeah,
actually. What's
yeah,
the obsession
yeah.
with zombies?
um, we Lee and I love time travel and sci-fi,
Yeah,
and we've
right.
worked on things. We worked on War of the Worlds. We worked on Star Trek. We worked on Doctor Who. We did a bunch of Doctor Who
Wow.
games.
Wow.
So we've always been interested in that sort of area of sci-fi. And so that this game is was meant to showcase all these things that we have in mind. The style of gameplay, this roguelite uh, type of game, is what my team plays. And so I firmly believe if you're going to make a game, it needs to be the sort of thing that you have a sense of what good enough
Yeah.
looks like, what
Yeah.
great looks like. And so that was another reason why we decided to go with this game first, is we knew what quality looked like. I could care less about sports. If I tried to make a football game, I would have no idea if it was good or if it was what mattered to someone who plays those.
To come back to your point about the nature of gamers, the people that play the
Yes.
games has changed. I mean, you made a very good point. I think lots of people play stuff on their phones, which
Yeah.
would be considered games. I mean, just tell us a little bit about that. I mean, let's say over the last 10, 15 years, I mean, how has the kind of gaming world sort of evolved?
I think there's a few things. I think that free to play mobile games I
Mhm.
think are a big part of why the notion of what's a gamer has stretched. It's done bad things for our industry, but it's done good things as well. And it's
Yeah.
made for these very accessible, short game experiences. And as our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, thanks to
Yeah.
things like Instagram, I think that being able to sit and play these things that are like popcorn is really good. I think COVID also, the pandemic and people being trapped in the house did a lot to grow the market in
Right.
terms of people playing games
Yeah.
together online. It certainly helped, kids a lot too. But I think even I think it also brought adults to sit down with their kids and see what they were doing. And so, you get people who are thinking, oh, how do I get my kids off Minecraft? Well, when you sit down and watch them play, you find out it's a massive, wonderful, creative, technical world that they're building. And so I think that everyone being stuck together in a house probably contributed to that too. And my generation is getting older. I'm in my 50s, and as a Gen Xer, we're one of the first generations to be kind of at the same point as the kids are in terms of technology, because the game started when we were kids, and we're still gaming in our 50s. And so it's really interesting how that's stretched the boundaries as well.
Yeah. And let me ask you about one of the concerns that people have, and that's the kind of, and tell me whether I've got this wrong, but I've spoken to people that think gaming is a bit addictive, and that
Mm.
is a concern for parents. I mean, what's your take on that issue? I mean, do you actually think that gaming is that addictive? And do you think parents should be concerned, or are people misinterpreting that? I mean, what's your view on that?
I think like any hobby, it can be gaming can be addictive. And I definitely think that there are those out there who try to take, you definitely see this in the mobile space. Mobile gaming, free to play gaming is all about getting people to keep playing. Because if they keep playing, they potentially keep spending or they keep watching ads and things like
Yeah.
that. So there's definitely more crossover there than in other areas of gaming, like what you see in Steam and consoles and stuff. So I think that that's way more on the mobile side than anything else. And I think there are also attempts to try to fix that for the industry to police itself and start to move away from that. Where it comes to kids and things like Roblox and Minecraft and Fortnite and stuff like that, I don't think it's anything particularly about the mechanics that are getting them to do that. There are definitely things like loot crates where there were issues there, and so again, self policing has started to fix that. Uh, I think it's remember these are kids who went through COVID, who
Yeah.
learned a different form of hanging out with their friends.
Yeah.
And so I think the social nature of it, the collaboration of it, I think is as much of it as anything else.
Yeah.
And I think, again, there's one of the things that so there are three games. There's three games that I just mentioned are kind of considered like the evergreen, ever gaming of our industry. And in many ways, it sucks, right? Like you try to make a game and put it out, and you have those three titans to compete with. But what's really interesting about those three games is that they all allow players to be creative and make stuff themselves in all three cases. And it's going back to what we're building. It's one of the reasons why we honed in on hyper-personalization, if you will,
Yeah.
or user-generated content, the ability to empower players to do
Mm.
stuff. And I think that that's what's so common around, call it like the teenagers right now, and really cool and really exciting. You see younger and younger Roblox. Most of the most successful games that are being built on top of Roblox are by like 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 16
Yeah.
year olds.
Yeah.
So they're being creative, they're building cool stuff. And it's not even about the graphics. Like most of these games to me as a 50 something are like, oh God, that looks horrible. But they don't care. They just want their the fun aspects of it. And that's
And
that's
it's
really cool. There's a genre right now called friend slop, which has gotten huge. And these games, I think, were kind of born out of Roblox. They don't look great. There's a lot of focus on physics and sort of flopping around the screen and stuff, but they're focused on you playing with your friends or shorter
yeah.
experiences. They're great for social media and sharing clips and stuff like that. So that's what I'm seeing in common amongst that
Yeah.
generation is multiplayer, social, being
Yeah.
able to create your own stuff.
Yeah. I think, I mean, there's another angle to it for me, which I have no evidence for, but it's just my own pet theory. I
Mm.
think one of the reasons gaming is so popular with youngsters is because school is pretty boring.
Yeah.
And gaming isn't actually. I mean, to come back to your point, I mean, you can do it with your friends, you can be creative, it's fun, you know. I mean, I think there's lots
There's
of
dopamine,
reasons.
right? There's dopamine hits in it. So it's,
Exactly.
when it
Yeah.
comes to especially kids with ADHD,
Yeah.
yeah, they get the dopamine hits there that they're not getting at school.
Yeah. I think one of the big issues with the education system is that it's not much fun for kids now. I mean, it wasn't much fun when I was at school, but I think it's probably
Oh.
even less now. And I think that is a bit of a turn-off, which is partly why games are so popular. I think. I mean, they're popular in their own right because they're fun. But anyway, that's a bit of an aside. But so let me ask you then. So I imagine, tell me if I'm wrong, I imagine it must have been pretty a bit of a challenge to get this whole thing up and running. Is that fair?
Mhm. Yes and no. Look, it's a difficult time in my industry to raise money.
Mm.
And that's a whole other hour we could fill into why
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah.
Uh, Suffice to say, um, we I'm fortunate enough that I've been in the industry a long time, and so I have a lot of people who trust me in the industry. So the approach I took to raising capital for this company was different than our last company. We focused way more on angel investment. So I have about 26 game industry angel investors,
And
all
why,
who
let me ask you about that. Why did you focus
yeah.
on angels rather than VCs? Because most people want to do the opposite. What,
Yeah,
tell us your logic.
there's a few things. There's a few things. The first one is necessity. The VCs have run away from our industry for the most
Right.
part. They were during COVID, um, the video games exploded, right? Then COVID ended and we all went back outside. And
Yeah.
of course, that wasn't sustainable. Of course, we were going to go back to life. Unfortunately, there was overinvestment into the space. Money was too easy to come by. So team size and ambition exploded. And then all of that had to come, sort of crashing down.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of specialist game funds that came in on the back of it. Most of them didn't do well or have either depleted their funds or no one wants them deploying their funds. So they're looking at things like project financing now. And again, that's a whole other story. Uh, so the part of it's necessity. They don't want us, we don't want them, sort of thing is kind of the attitude I adopted. I think with what I found with angel investors is, all VCs will tell you that they want to help, and these are the ways that we can help, and these are the things
Yeah.
that we're going to do. And for the most part, they don't, because they have a whole portfolio of companies to deal with. Angel investors are different. First of all, it's personal, it's emotional. And I say this as an angel investor. I've just done Lee and I've just done our third angel investment. It's emotional. It's your money. I have to take that out of my bank account and send it off to the company and hope that someday I get some sort of return on it. So because of that, I do want to be more involved than I think I would be as a fund if it was LP money and it wasn't my personal money. So it's harder to raise in some ways too, because of the emotional thing. I think angel investors have just as many, if not more, questions than a VC will,
Yeah.
and I think have more to offer. When I send an investor update to folks within the game industry, I kind of have I can meaningfully ask for help in certain ways because I know what they all do and I know what their core competency is, and so that's really powerful. And it's made for a great advisory board too. All my advisors have invested; they're all part of that angel investment group, and so they all have skin in the game. So I think it's really great. I think that for a long time, I was in the game industry back when VCs wanted nothing to do with us. They didn't understand video games. I mean, I'm going back to the 90s, and it was all about tech investments. And not only you could count on one hand the VCs who would even take a conversation with a game company. So that was a problem. But even if even if you avoided that, there was no angel investment. Like what tech companies had in common back then was people would raise money, they'd sell their company, and then they'd angel invest. And there were things like the angel list, in California,
Yeah.
and that became a way of fostering that investment and that process, that circle of life in companies. The game industry didn't have that, and whether that was because we weren't as affluent or because we were not crazy enough to invest in our own industry or whatever, it was unheard of to angel invest in video games. And so the only solution then was publishers.
Mm.
And then, like I said, the pandemic that started to change things, and now there's a little bit more. I think that Europe is more active in game angel investment than America. So I'm a part of a group called the Game Angels that Nick Button Brown runs. And I think we have like 400 people in that group. Not everyone's that
Wow.
active, but
Wow.
it's hundreds of people who are involved there. And all my angel investment has been through there. And Game Angels have invested in my studio and so some of the individuals within there. Um, and so, so I think it's really powerful because I think that the economics of our industry have changed along the way too. Like no one wants to spend millions and millions and millions of pounds now spent making a game because you just don't know if it's going to work. It's very competitive, and crowded, and so the amount of money that you need, you can do on the angel
Yeah.
side. So
Yeah.
going back to the original question, I raised the first few $100,000 that way, and that allowed me to start paying, the two engineers that were initially part of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lee and I didn't pay ourselves for the first 6 months, so that was part of our angel investment into
Yeah.
what we did.
Yeah.
And so I've done this very methodically. Every 6 months or so, like clockwork, I've raised another few £100,000.
Right.
And so we've raised enough money now to get to market. The platform is built. There's still things we want to do with it, but the platform is great. And this first game that we're doing now, we have all the traditional challenges of finishing it and making sure it's fun and getting people to know about it. And so that looks a lot like traditional game
Yeah,
development.
sure. And as you've been building the business, I mean, have there been any particular sort of turning points as you've been? I mean, lots of businesses evolve along the way, don't they? I mean, has that happened at all to your kind of roadmap?
I think that like I was saying, the industry has been terrified of AI. It's starting to change, and we're starting to get recognition for being kind of on the bleeding edge of that. I'd say a big moment for us was explaining to Google and Google Cloud, the team there, what we were building. And I've had this conversation now with a lot of different companies in the tech space who are like, "Wait, you're doing this at runtime?" So most of the use case of AI within our industry and within all industries is productivity
Yeah.
and doing things faster and cheaper and da, 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 and all that's fine. We were one of the first companies out there that have said, no, 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 we're actually going to use this to enable players to do things immediately.
Yeah.
Like I said to 11 Labs, we're using your stuff at runtime. Like everyone's saying they're going to do that. We're actually doing that. So I think realizing how far ahead we were was a turning point for us. And we went from feeling like we had to rush to get out there to just being like, look, we just need to make a great game, prove this isn't a gimmick, and not rush so much because it still feels like we're a year ahead of most folks. Like we're building this
Yeah.
moat around us, and that moat is specifically the fact that we've been at it for 2 years, and a lot of this is harder than I think we remember it being. You
And
know,
why do you say that? Why is it harder? I mean, you would think it would be easier if you've done it a few times. I
it's
mean, why is
it's
it harder?
the nuance of it. Yes, there are easy things that you can do, but just for example, just from an art standpoint, right? So the character art in our game is 2D. And when you say you want to be Paul Essery in the game, we need to generate a 2D head. It has to be turned off to the side because in sprites you flip flop things. And
Yeah.
so we need you to look, and then we need a torso that matches that again in our art style. Have to remove the arms, have to remove the legs. Then we need hands, closed hands and open hands.
Right.
We need feet, all these things, and it has to come out on a sprite sheet and have the background removed and then immediately go into game. And I was just saying to our team this morning, because we've just nailed getting hands in there as well, that just looking at where we've gone in the last 2 years, that it's remarkable. We've changed art models 5, 6 times now, effortlessly. Every time they get better, we pivot to a better technology solution. But what we've learned about how not just to get those immediately usable art assets, but in our art style faithfully, is really really hard. And it's not just being as a white male, that's not that difficult. But imagine if you had a turban on or a nose ring, or if you were of color and you had a birthmark on your face, all this stuff. We've had to go back and train. So the process of training this stuff is my engineer and my artist working side by side together on this and realizing, oh, everyone's coming out with jaws that are too flat. Okay, so we need to get something else in the mix that teaches them what these other things, look like. And so it's a very touchy feely process that we've had to get really good at over the last couple of years.
And let me ask you about managing that process. I mean, I always think that the job of the CEO is to kind of figure out how to make the whole thing work.
Mm.
And I was reading this thing the other day, and I forget the guy's name now. He's written some book or other on, but he made a really interesting point. He said that most businesses fail because they solve the wrong problem. They don't
Mm.
focus on the fixing the problem that they need to fix for whatever reason. They maybe misdiagnose it or whatever. I mean, how do you make sure that you're focused on the right problems and that your people are focused on fixing the right problems? I mean, how do you do that as the CEO? Because really, that's, in my view, I mean, you may have a different view, but in my view, the core job of the CEO is to make sure that everyone's going in the right direction.
Definitely in the right direction. We're a bit unique as game companies
Mm.
because it isn't even just about solving a problem. It's about the problem being this type of game doesn't exist, I suppose, and
Yeah,
and fun because not unlike a film, it falls down if it isn't
yeah,
creative and quality and compelling and things like that. I think my job has changed a lot. Our last studio, we eventually were 25 people, which was too big. And now we're 9 people and it feels perfect. Like I don't want to getting
right.
any bigger than that. And one of the things that's enabled is for me to sort of streamline what I do. I spent a lot of time managing personnel crises when we were 25 people
Yeah,
and as a fully remote company where most of our interaction is Slack and Google Meets,
yeah,
it's weird the stuff that goes on behind the scenes in that kind of company, just in terms of someone gets unhappy, they send a text to somebody who sends a text to somebody else, and it becomes this spirally thing. It's almost like throwing a grenade. You have people who like throw a grenade around because they post something in a channel. And we all know that just like emails and text messages, you can't see tone when people text, and so people can offend people without intending to. I think my number one job as the CEO is to make decisions that I'm willing to live by, and I think that that's what I've noticed over the years is that somebody needs to say, okay, let's do it that way, and be culpable for that decision, and then, which sucks at times, and I'm not saying you make them in isolation. I'm saying you get everyone, we talk and we come to a conclusion, and I say, okay, we're going to go with that. We're going to go with that date, or whatever that is. And without that, it's chaos. Somebody needs to be willing to say
yeah.
that, and so that's probably like the biggest job that I have.
Yeah, I mean,
Fortunately, I like to think of my team as a rock band, and it's a new model for how we think about independent game development. And it's on the back of a few things. Like for years, the game industry has been saying we need to be more like film. We need to focus more on freelancers because the way video games tend to work from a cycle standpoint is you have a small team. It becomes really big when you're in full production because you have to get the thing out. And then you're left with a bunch of people who don't have relevance to starting another small thing. There's too many
yeah,
people, so
yeah,
people get laid off. And so we've been in this constant hamster wheel within our industry that you really saw come to head post-pandemic, right? That's why there were so many layoffs. I mean, it was ridiculous. Our industry is still recovering from the horror of this. And one of the reasons is because that no one has ever quite figured out how to fix that. And the fix to that, I think, is much, much smaller teams that can flex to
yeah. And
freelancers.
to what extent
And then those
is
freelancers go back to doing other
yeah?
projects.
I mean, I get the logic of employing freelancers. I mean, I've run a business that was worked in a similar way. To what extent is I know you're using AI in the game, if you like, but to what extent are you able to um, improve the productivity of your people using AI? I mean, are your developers using AI a lot? I mean, is that having an impact on the productivity of the business, the effectiveness of the business?
It depends on the person on the team. Like everyone is free to use it, and some do more than others. I think my platform engineer, because he's the AI guy on the team, uses it probably the most.
Yeah,
Um, by the parts of the team working on the output, the game itself on Unity, do to some extent. What the coders have said to me is that it's a little bit. Coding has always been kind of sharing aspects of code, and so you have repositories because why
yeah,
reinvent the wheel? And so AI has kind of replaced that, which is cool. So you can seem to build a shader to do X, Y, Z, and it can give you something that then you can decide. So here's the thing. Here's what people don't get about AI. You can't just take what the AI is giving you. You have to be good enough at
Yeah.
coding to know if that's garbage and to know how to fix what it's given you. And
Yeah.
so that's where it's helped my team. Is it's just like a junior, who can help on some stuff and just save time and efficiency. So we're always looking at ways to do that, and we've been exploring how we can use it more for QA and things like that too. So definitely it helps. It hasn't been the point for us so much, but it definitely helps. For us, the
And do
point was
you,
more about
let me
fun.
ask a question that's sort of related to that. I mean, there's a lot of discussion at the moment about kind of junior level jobs disappearing because people are using
Mm.
AI to do those things that
Mm.
previously used a junior for. I mean, do you think it's going to have downstream an impact on people's ability to get into the sector, to become engineers in the gaming world and to thrive? I mean, do you think it's going to have an impact on, game engineers' careers, for want of a better way of describing it? Maybe that's not the best way to describe it. Do you see my point?
I certainly there's some impact, just
Mm.
like remote working has that impact. We have a very senior team. We have brought in student interns. My son came in and did work study for us. We had another very enterprising kid who was in like year 10 reach out to us to ask if he just finished doing some work study for us. It worked better than I thought it would. But the other thing, my husband and I are visiting professors at University of South Wales for like a decade now in their games program. And I think what it allows is us to go back to the old days. Like when the video game industry started, it was one or two people in their garage, making, the equivalent of Pong. And it eventually turned into this big business. But what's really exciting now is one, two people can make a game. So
Mm.
yeah, maybe you're going to see less 100-person studios, but those 100 people could be 10-person studios
Yeah.
or, 52-person studios,
Yeah.
whatever. So I think uh, what becomes really important is being cross-discipline, and being entrepreneurial as an engineer. Because as an engineer, AI doesn't know what fun is. So I don't think AI can make games. Maybe eventually AI can be trained to know what fun is, but I think there's something very personal about fun. There's something very human about fun.
Yeah.
And so the AI isn't going to make games for us anytime soon. But if you get someone who's an engineer who understands the output of what's coming out from AI, it could work closely with that, and it could make something. You could deploy that onto Steam or onto a phone really quickly. So I think on the one hand, that means we're going to be more and more crowded with content. On the other hand, it is a sort of great leveler, which means that like
Yeah.
anybody can pursue their passion for making
Yeah. Yeah.
games.
It's going to be an interesting few years. That's my take on it. And
You know what I mean? But it'll be independent. They won't necessarily be able to make money doing it. They may have to bootstrap it. But
yeah.
look at music. When you if you want to be in a band, no one pays you to do that. Eventually, you get good enough that you can get a record
Mm.
deal or something like
Mm.
that, right? Or followers on YouTube. It's all changed too. But and it's the same. It's the same in anything that is hobbyist until you're being paid to do it.
Yeah.
Is that so? I think you have to be more self-starting as a young engineer, as opposed to it used to be. If you wanted to get into the game industry, you either got like a junior programming job, or you got a QA job, or there were certain kind of natural on ramps into our industry. So I think that's all changing.
Yeah. I mean, I think your point about being a self-starter is really well made, I think. Let me ask you about your job. I mean, we've sort of touched on that. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of CEOs, and most of them say it's a pretty tough gig. There's good days, there's bad days. It's kind of a bit of a roller coaster. What are your thoughts?
It's lonely, I mean, fortunately, my co-founders, my husband, aren't going well. It's very hard to get away from that, and we tend to dwell in that discussion. But running a company, can be really lonely because there's a lot of stuff that you do in isolation. Our team works together on building the game. I, with the help of Lee or of some advisors, I'm off like trying to raise money for the company. Um, making decisions about hiring and things like that. So a lot of my job is a little bit in isolation of what everyone else is doing, less visible. And there's always that balance between wanting to keep everyone in the loop, but wanting to protect your team so that everyone can stay focused. So I kind of allow myself to take on stresses that I don't want other people to know about, because
Yeah.
I don't. I think you think it could affect productivity if people are worried about runway and things like that.
Yeah. And what sort of trade-offs has that created for you? I mean, has it impacted on your life? I mean, being a CEO?
It used to significantly mean I didn't have time to do some of the things that I wanted to work on in the
Mm.
company. When we were 25 people, I it was a full-time job managing
Yeah,
the
yeah,
company and
yeah.
managing personalities in the company and all that. Now, it's meant that there are times when I don't feel like there's as much CEO task stuff. Like if we've raised money and if all the things that are in my brain are going fine, I don't want to be dead weight. So I've learned to use Unity. At this point in my career, I'm doing like brass tacks game design help, like level design help, laying out levels, which is awesome. Like I was an English major, so the fact that I can be creative again is really fun. You have to be careful because there's also I need to keep an eye on the future of where the company's going, so I can't spend all my time mucking about in Unity. But it's nice that I'm able to balance that side of my
Yeah,
brain with
yeah.
the
And
creative stuff too.
what sort of things keep you awake at night?
Right now, a few things. It's the public perception of generative AI, and it's starting to change, but it's our biggest risk right now.
So just
You
explain what
know,
you mean by that. I mean, when you
in,
say the perception of generative
oh,
AI
oh, that
changing, I
there's a
mean,
lot of hate out there for AI. Across lots of areas. You see film, for example, A24 just took in a huge investment from Google DeepMind. The reaction was, "Screw you! I'm not going to go see any more A24 movies anymore." Uh, on the game side, Steam, which is the biggest PC storefront, requires you to disclose how you're using generative AI in the game and to give quite a bit of detail on it. And there are people who won't play a game if that box is ticked, and so it's a bit of a scarlet letter, if you will. Uh, it's starting to change, and I think it's a very sort of squeaky minority, but it's still there, and it means a few things. It means press are intimidated about talking about, in any good way, about games that use generative AI.
yeah,
And influencers, who are a big part of our industry, are also, concerned that they're going to lose subscribers if they take a balanced approach or even a positive, approach to it.
mm,
But it's starting to change. And then there are people who've lost. Look, and the hard part of it is there are people who are looking for work. I've tried to do as much as I can to help there. I'm involved with folks like Amir Satvat in our industry, who's gotten thousands of people jobs. And I've been, trying to amplify what he's doing wherever I can. But it's not because of AI. Or any research that has been done about this has confirmed again and again and again that the reason for the layoffs is not generative AI. I think one of the worst things about the last couple of years is that it happened just as the pandemic was ending.
yeah,
Things like Dali coming out, and so it's an easy scapegoat, whipping
yeah,
boy, if you will, for to say that, oh, it's because of generative AI and a bunch of corporate, PR of, yeah, we're going to replace everything generative. And they're doing that for their stock price. Like it really doesn't. It doesn't replace people, and so it's unfortunate. And you see it a lot from artists in the game industry, who feel like they're going to lose their livelihood on the back of this. And I think it's going to open up new avenues
yeah,
for artists to train models in their art style willfully. Like
yeah.
I have an
I mean,
artist on my team who's brilliant, and it's his art style, and he's chosen to do that. And I think you'll see more of that, and
yeah,
artists will be able to monetize that. So I
yeah,
think that
yeah. I mean,
we just need
it's
to give it
interesting.
time to.
Yeah, your point is interesting. I think. I mean, a lot of people are thinking, how is AI going to affect my job? Whereas I think actually it needs to be turned on its head. And you need to say, how do we use AI to create jobs? And there are lots of ways to do that
Exactly
if you
that.
think
Yeah.
creatively about it. I mean, we're just not at, we haven't flipped yet, I don't think. And I think that happens with lots of new technologies when they come along. People get paranoid about how things are done currently, whereas really you need to be asking, how can I use this to do new things? And that's where the opportunities are, I think. Um, Let me ask you about personal commitment. I mean, I think it building a business, being a CEO requires a sort of a personal commitment. You have to be willing to say, I'm going to fight my way through all the challenges that come my way. And what kind of commitment has it required from you, would you say?
We've, and I think part of this is because my co-founder is my husband. We've had to go kind of all in on these things
Yeah,
that we've done. It isn't like, some founders have a partner who's a well-paid person doing other things,
yeah,
which allows you to emotionally separate, and have
yeah,
conversations about something that
yeah,
isn't your job. And from a financial standpoint, it also manages to balance the risk. So, we've had to go all in on this as a family to say that, we're willing to sort of stake our own money on this.
And
And so
has
I think
that
that's probably the
sharpened your approach as the CEO? Is that made you sharper, would you say?
I think so. It's just like angel investing, right?
Mm.
You have that I guess you could say I've certainly seen people who do that and to the detriment where they don't realize something is a sinking ship, because
Yeah,
at some point you have to cut weight if it's not working. But yes, I do think so because it's our personal investment of ours too, not just a job.
yeah, yeah. And has that pushed, would you say that's pushed you out of your comfort zone, or, I mean, how do you
Oh,
feel about
definitely,
that?
definitely. Our last studio, I closed $7 million in a round, which was this was during the pandemic. So not only was it during the pandemic, so it all had to be done remotely. Um, I never, I'd only closed VC money once before, and it was from a very old friend of mine. So it was not a typical, sort of deal. In this case, I had 24 people signing my agreements. I had a major VC leading the round. I had tons of due diligence that I had to
Mhm.
get through, um, and anxiety, and I couldn't sleep at night. And so it was really really hard, and it definitely pushed me outside my comfort zone. I think I didn't know this at the time, but I think 1% of VC money or 2% of VC money is closed by female founders.
Yeah, it's 2% of
Um,
people, 2 or 3%.
so
I think. Yeah,
yeah. So I don't think I realized how much I was accomplishing in doing it. I was
yeah,
just focused on doing what I needed to do and getting it done. And I had lots of support from my partner and also Nick Button Brown, I'll mention again, who's gotten me through loads of things. So he also, was just I think it's really important to surround yourself with people that
yeah,
can support you through these things, which is, why I'm lucky to have Lee, why I'm lucky to have folks like Nick and my advisors and stuff who I lean into. Nick would call me back then when I was closing this round, and he'd say, Susan, tell me what you're worried about today so I can help you not worry about it and you can function and do what you need to do. And
mm,
I cannot tell you how helpful that was to me mentally to have somebody I could offer
yeah, yeah.
to.
I mean, it's interesting. You
But yeah,
used the phrase "do what needed to be done," and when I talk to
yeah.
CEOs that have been successful, the ones that have been successful almost always are the people that focus on doing the things that need to be done, which I think is an interesting trait.
Yeah.
They don't seem to get distracted by, oh, I can't raise money because it's only 3% goes to women. They just focus on what they've got to do,
Yeah.
which I think is an interesting sort of illustration of the kind of founder's mindset, actually.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I've had to learn to sort of put some things off for future me to deal with. To unpack things sometimes if I feel overwhelmed by these things that could be problems.
Yeah,
And as someone like I have pure obsessional OCD, so I have my own issue with that, and the anxiety of pure obsessional OCD. I've had to learn to push things off as a problem for me for next week, and
yeah,
and just saying that sometimes, just saying that's a problem for future Susan
yeah,
is really empowering sometimes to say,
yeah.
okay, I'm just going to push that off to the side for
I
now.
mean, it's a very interesting mental tool, that, isn't it? It's parking the problem to come
Yeah.
back to it after you've dealt with the thing that's immediately of concern,
Yes.
rather than might be a problem next week, if you see what I mean. Which is I think that's a
Yeah.
skill that people learn over time, actually.
Yeah.
You also strike me as somebody that values learning.
Mm, definitely. Have to constantly be learning. I love science. I have lots of hobbies. I've never been afraid of new technology and having to get up to speed on it and being able to speak reasonably articulately about it. So yes, definitely.
So,
I don't think
so
anyone stopped learning.
I think one of the things that's interesting about building a business is that the way you learn is different. So in an academic environment, I'm not knocking academia, but in an
Yeah.
academic environment, you listen to lectures, you maybe watch stuff, you read books, you write essays, and that's fine.
Mm.
In a business environment, you make a decision to do something, and
Mhm.
you have to commit to that, and you have to deal with it, whether it works or it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
let me ask you about the impact that's, I mean, you're bound to have had, you must have had successes because you wouldn't be where you are. What impact have those successes had on you, would you say? We'll come back to the impact of failures in a moment, but what would you say has been the impact of successes on the way you've built the business?
I think it's knowing that it's possible. I think
Right.
until you've had some success at something you've done, it's easy to think it's not possible and that you're never going to get to the top of that hill. And so that definitely helps when things don't go right to be able to remember that you have pulled it off
Yeah.
before, can and that you can again. Um, and going back to what you were saying about learning and learning from doing is
Yeah.
really important. And I think that that's a big part of the CEO's job is being able to throw yourself into situations that you're not comfortable with and
Yeah.
figuring out how to.
I mean, somebody, one of the CEOs I spoke to said it's about getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that is a really good way
Yeah,
of
yeah,
putting
yeah,
it.
yeah, 100%. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely,
Let
definitely.
me ask you about the flip side to success, the failures. I mean, what have you learned from one or two of the failures that you've had? Because you must have had a few.
Um, yeah, look, we Tiny Rebel, which was the studio we've what we still have. It's sort of dormant now, but we've had for 18 years now. I'd say that we we raised money and then we got a bit too big too quickly. You get pushed to sort of, especially when you bring in VC money, sort of build, build, build. There'll be more coming later. And so I think that so when we raised, we were 9 people and eventually up to 24 people. 9 people, no coincidence that my current studio is 9 people, was an amazing size.
Mm.
Everyone, can be, on the calls that we're together and be a part of different discussions. When we got bigger, that became much harder because it was more specialized. Everyone had to
Yeah.
kind of stay in their lane.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason for you to be on that call because that has nothing to do with your job, description. And we had a lovely producer, but who was very much a Jira backlog grooming, etc. sort of producer, which is great for certain things, but not for the iterative game cycles that we were in. So he was wonderful. So that's no offense to him. It just was when the company eventually shrunk down again to
Mm.
10 people with the wrong systems in place because we were no longer that big company again. So now we needed everyone to be cross-discipline again and being
Yeah.
involved in everything. And so it changes a lot. I think like the mid 20s is a really awkward size for a company.
Yeah.
You're too big to be nimble and you're too small uh, to play in the bigger, to have multiple teams or anything like that. So that was one of the big things that I've learned. Putting this smaller studio together has been great because everyone is senior, so it's very flat.
Yeah.
Everyone feels empowered. We use Trello instead of Jira and are in like weekly sprints, and so it's allowing us to be more creative, less about long-term planning, and more about iteration and finding the fun
Yeah.
and so forth.
I,
And so,
I mean, I think teams of that size are a bit like a football team. I know we
yeah,
don't want to talk too much about football because we just had the World Cup, but I mean, it seems to be 10 or 11, 10 or 11 people is quite a good size.
it
I've
is.
run bigger teams or bigger companies and I think 10 or 11 is a nice size because you can run it like a football team if you like. People have got their basic places on the
Yes.
map, but anyone can do anything if they have to. And I quite like you, I personally preferred those relatively small teams. I think they're more dynamic and I felt that you could make more progress in them. Actually, that
Yes.
was my experience. But let me ask you, I'm just conscious of the time. I just want to
Yeah.
ask you one more question before we wind up. Um, if you were to offer some advice to somebody wanting to do something similar to you, I mean, what would that advice be? Perhaps to a rookie CEO. I mean, what would your words of wisdom be after the years that you've put into building businesses like this?
I think on the game side, it's interesting. Lee and I agreed to do our third angel investment, small check, yesterday. And one of the reasons was I saw this CEO making some very similar decisions to us in terms of size, in terms of sustainability, and even, they have revenue coming in, on the back of some accounts, and they have a very long runway in the bank. So I'd say part of it is, especially now, is taking a really sustainable approach to building a business, in terms of size, in terms of not getting ahead of yourselves, in terms of like what you do first. So I think that would be, a big part of it, and raise more money than you think you need.
Yeah.
Because no matter, as a CEO, you're the one who's literally, in some cases, writing payroll checks and watching the balance go down,
Yeah.
which, is cannot be an underestimated stress. And so always raise more than you think you do, than you think you need. And I think it's wrong to focus too much on dilution and valuation and stuff in the early days. It's just do what you need to do to get the money together. If you really believe in it, do what you need to do.
Yeah.
Get the money together. Within
And that,
reason. I'm not saying give away half your company, but you know what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
don't hyper
And
focus on the numbers.
yeah, and I think the point you just made then about, this the way you think about these things is, really important, and I think that one of the things, I mean, I've got a portfolio of investments, and one of the things I've always looked for is the kind of thinking behind what they're doing. And if that makes sense and you've got a
Yeah,
good team and a good product, you're probably halfway there, But if people are
exactly.
off the wall, then
Yes.
there's going to be problems downstream. So I think your point about, the thinking, getting the thinking straight, really,
And
really
have
good.
a backup plan. What happens if
Yeah.
it doesn't go to plan? Because most of the things don't. There's a reason why most companies fail. Is what's the pivot?
Yeah.
Slack, that was a game company.
Yeah.
And they eventually pivoted to making Slack. So like what's the have a fallback, that
Yeah.
allows you to keep going.
Yeah. Susan, thank you for coming to talk to us. I mean, I
Thank
think it's a
you.
really interesting proposition that you're working on, and good luck with it going forward.
Thank
I've no
you.
doubt it'll be a big success. I mean, I think it's, right at the cutting edge of what's happening in the gaming world, and what a really interesting proposition. I mean, I'm not really a gamer, and even I think it's pretty cool. So thank
Thank
you
you.
for
Go on Steam and try it. Yeah.
thank you for
Play
making a bit of
live.
time to come and talk about it. I really appreciate that. And good luck going
Thank you.
forward.
Thank you, Paul.
Cheers. Bye bye.